The hall of the Galactic Senate was older than most civilizations. Its walls were carved from the bones of a dead moon, and its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. 1,000 seats rose in circles around the central platform, and every seat was filled. Representatives from 42 species sat in silence as the most powerful being in the galaxy spoke. Supreme Archon Vel-Cathari stood at the center of it all. He was tall, even by the standards of his own species. His skin was the color of dark iron, and his 4 eyes glowed with a cold orange light. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 9,000 years of unbroken conquest. "The creatures who call themselves humans," he said, letting the word hang in the air like something rotten, "have refused our generous terms. They cling to their 15 little star systems on the edge of the galaxy, like insects hiding under a rock. They believe that distance will protect them. They believe that silence is the same as strength." He paused and let his gaze sweep across the Senate. No one moved. "They are wrong." The Senate erupted in agreement. Fists slammed on ancient stone. Mandibles clicked in approval. Tentacles curled in salute. The vote was quick and final. The motion to annex all human-controlled space passed without a single objection. The Grand Armada, 12,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the galaxy, would crush humanity like dust beneath a boot. On a planet very far from that Senate hall, a woman sat alone on a cliff, overlooking a red ocean. Her name was Alara Voss. She was 47 years old, and her dark hair had started going gray at the temples. She had a scar that ran from her left ear to the corner of her jaw, a gift from a piece of shrapnel that had torn through her bridge 6 years ago and killed everyone standing beside her. She lived on New Carthage, a Terran colony known for its red seas and quiet sunsets. She had a small house. She grew vegetables. She did not sleep well. The message arrived on a priority channel that she thought had been deactivated years ago. The words on her screen were short and clear. "Captain Voss, report to Lunar Command. Immediate. Authorization. Asante. Admiral. TDC." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she packed a bag. Lunar Command sat deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon. It was the beating heart of the Terran Defense Compact, and Alara had not been inside it for 6 years. The corridors were the same cold gray she remembered. The people walking through them were not. She saw fear in their eyes, real fear, the kind that comes when you know something terrible is coming and you cannot stop it. Admiral Kofi Asante was waiting for her in the war room. He was an old man with kind eyes and steady hands. He had been Ilara's mentor once, a lifetime ago. Now he looked like he had not slept in weeks. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You didn't give me much choice," she replied. He almost smiled. Then the smile died. He activated a holographic display. The Nexion Rift appeared, a vast region of empty space that served as the Dominion's primary staging ground. Around it, thousands of red dots blinked into existence. Each dot was a warship. 12,000 ships, Asante said quietly. The largest fleet the galaxy has ever seen. They will launch in 90 days. Their target is every human world, starting with the outer colonies. Ilara studied the display. Her face revealed nothing. And our fleet? 200 ships, most of them outdated. We have perhaps 40 vessels that can stand in a real fight. He paused. We cannot win a conventional war. Not even close. Then why am I here? Asante touched a control, and the holographic display changed. The thousands of red dots shrank into the background, and a single blue dot appeared at the center of the screen. One ship. Project Revenant, he said. We have been building this for 60 years. 6 decades of research, engineering, and preparation, all aimed at a single question. What do we do when the galaxy finally decides to come for us? He pressed another control, and the blue dot expanded into a detailed schematic. Ilara leaned forward. The ship was called the TDS Achilles. From the outside, it was nothing special. Mid-sized, rough hull plating, no visible heavy weapons. It looked like a cargo hauler that had seen too many bad years. It does not look like much, Ilara said. That is the point, Asante replied. Every species in the Dominion builds warships that look powerful because they believe war is about intimidation. They cover their ships in weapons and armor and make them as large as possible. The Achilles was built on a different philosophy. He zoomed into the ship's interior, and Ilara saw layers upon layers of systems she had never seen before. Strange engines, massive antenna arrays, computer cores that filled entire decks. The Achilles is not a warship, Asante said. It is a key, and the Dominion is a lock that has been waiting to be opened. He explained. He talked for 2 hours. He told her about the Phantom Drive, an engine that could fold the ship between layers of space itself, making it invisible and allowing it to appear anywhere in an instant. He told her about the Echo Array, the most advanced electronic warfare system ever built by human hands, capable of breaking into alien networks, intercepting communications, and rewriting orders. He told her about the Fracture Protocol, a strategy designed not to destroy the Dominion fleet, but to turn it against itself. The Dominion is not one empire, Asante said. It is 42 species held together by fear and tradition. They do not trust each other. They do not even like each other. The only thing that keeps them united is the belief that the Dominion is too powerful to challenge. He looked at her. We are going to take that belief away. Ilara was quiet for a long time. She looked at the schematic of the Achilles. She looked at the 12,000 red dots surrounding it. One ship against an armada. The crew? She asked. 300 volunteers, the best we have. Engineers, hackers, linguists, psychologists, physicists. Not many soldiers. Because this is not a battle. No, this is surgery. Ilara closed her eyes. She thought about her old crew. She thought about the faces of the people who had died beside her on a broken bridge 6 years ago. She thought about the 15 billion humans spread across 15 worlds who would all be gone in 90 days if she failed. She opened her eyes. When do I leave? Asante handed her a command badge. It was warm in her palm. The Achilles is docked at Bay 7. Your crew is already aboard. Ilara walked through the corridors of Lunar Command one more time. This time the people she passed did not just look afraid. Some of them looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw something else in their eyes. A tiny, desperate spark of hope. She reached Bay 7. The Achilles waited behind the airlock, humming softly as if it were alive and breathing. She stepped aboard. Commander Rajan Mori met her at the bridge entrance. He was young, sharp-eyed, and stood very straight. He saluted. Captain on the bridge, he announced. Ilara looked around. Her new crew looked back at her. 300 faces, all of them calm, all of them certain. They knew what they had signed up for. She took her seat in the captain's chair and let out a slow breath. They think we are afraid, she said quietly to Rajan. Good. Fear is a weapon too. The Achilles slipped away from Lunar Command without a sound, like a shadow peeling itself off the wall. It moved past the orbital stations, past the defense platforms, past the last familiar lights of home, and then it was gone, swallowed by the dark between the stars. One ship, 300 souls, 90 days to save a species. The Achilles had been in open space for 3 days before Commander Rajan Mori finally asked the question that had been burning inside him. He found Captain Ilara Voss in the ship's central operations room, surrounded by holographic screens showing alien text, ship diagrams, and communication intercepts. She had not slept. He could see it in the shadows beneath her eyes. "Captain," he said, "I have reviewed the crew roster 4 times. We have 72 engineers, 41 communication specialists, 38 linguists, 29 computer scientists, 22 psychologists, and a dozen physicists. We have exactly 19 combat-trained Marines." He paused. On a ship heading straight into the heart of 12,000 enemy warships. Alara did not look up from her screens. "And? Respectfully, Captain, what kind of warship carries more psychologists than soldiers?" There was the faintest trace of a smile on her scarred face. "The kind that does not plan to fire a single shot." She stood and led him through the ship. The Achilles was not large from the outside, but inside it was a maze of technology that Rajan had never seen in any Terran vessel. They passed through corridor after corridor, each one leading to something stranger than the last. The first stop was the engine room. Most warships had fusion reactors or antimatter drives. The Achilles had something called the Phantom Drive. It filled 3 entire decks, a massive humming column of energy wrapped in layers of exotic matter that seemed to bend the light around it. Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka was waiting for them. She was a small woman with oil-stained hands and the calm confidence of someone who understood things that most humans could not even imagine. "The Phantom Drive does not move us through space," she explained to Rajan. "It folds us between dimensional layers. Think of reality as a sheet of paper. Normal ships travel along the surface. We slip between the pages." "Which means?" Rajan asked. "Which means we become invisible. Not cloaked, not hidden. We exist in a space that their sensors are not designed to detect. We can move anywhere, appear anywhere, and disappear before they can react." Rajan stared at the drive. The air around it shimmered like heat rising from hot sand. "How long have we had this?" 40 years of development, Yuki said. "We cracked the theory by studying Dominion warp technology. They never understood what they had. We did." The second stop was the Echo Array. It occupied the entire upper deck of the ship, rows upon rows of processing cores, antenna systems, and decryption units that filled the space with a constant, low hum. It felt like standing inside the brain of something vast and patient. Lieutenant Commander Sana Okafor ran the Echo team. She was tall, had close-cropped silver hair, and spoke in the quiet, precise way of someone who spent her life listening to secrets. "The Dominion uses a unified communication network," Sana explained. "Every ship, every station, every command post is connected through the same system. They have been using it for thousands of years. They trust it completely." "And we can break into it?" Rajan asked. "We have already broken into it." Sana pulled up a screen showing live Dominion transmissions. Fleet orders, supply requests, personal messages between officers. All of it flowing through the Achilles like water through a net. "We have been inside their network for 12 years, listening, learning, mapping every node, every protocol, every security weakness." Rajan felt something cold move through his chest. 12 years. Humanity had been preparing for this war for 12 years, and the Dominion had no idea. "We can read their messages," Sana continued. "We can alter their messages. We can create new messages that look perfectly real. And with enough time, we can even access neural-linked command systems, the direct brain connections that senior Dominion officers use to control their ships." "You can take control of their ships?" "Not directly, but we can feed false data into a captain's neural link. Make them see threats that are not there. Make them miss threats that are." The last stop was a small, quiet room near the center of the ship. No technology filled this space. Instead, there were books, thousands of them, some physical, most digital, covering every wall. Studies of alien psychology, cultural histories, social structures, religious texts, political analyses. Every species in the Dominion had been studied, catalogued, and understood. Dr. Amara Diop, the ship's chief psychologist, sat in a worn chair surrounded by notes and diagrams. She was an older woman with gray locks and warm, steady eyes that seemed to see through everything. "This is the real weapon," Ilara said to Rajan. "Not the drive, not the echo array, this." Amara stood and activated a large display. It showed the Dominion, not as a fleet or a map, but as a web of relationships. 42 species, all connected by lines of different colors. Red for rivalry, yellow for grudging tolerance, blue for alliance, green for dependence. There was very little blue. "The Dominion has held together for 9,000 years, Amara said, but it has never been united. It is a machine built from parts that do not fit together. The Velathari sit at the top because they were the first to conquer faster than light travel. The Raith Kai are the warriors, proud, aggressive, and deeply resentful of being treated as weapons rather than leaders. The Selvari are the intelligence caste, brilliant, secretive, and despised by almost everyone else. The Orathi were conquered 400 years ago and have never forgiven it." She traced the lines on the display. "Every species in the Dominion has a grievance. Every species has a fear. Every species has a pressure point. The only thing that holds them together is the shared belief that the Dominion cannot be beaten. And we are going to break that belief," Ilara said. Rajan looked at the web of rivalries and resentments glowing on the display. He was beginning to understand. The Achilles was not going to fight the Grand Armada. It was going to reach inside it and pull it apart, thread by thread, like unraveling a rope. "The fracture protocol," Ilara said. "Phase 1. We poison their communications. We turn whispers into shouts, and disagreements into hatreds. Phase 2. We become a ghost. We appear and disappear, making every fleet group believe they are under threat, while the others do nothing. Phase 3. She paused. "Phase 3. We show them the truth about what the Dominion really is, and we let them tear themselves apart." She ran the crew through war games for the next 3 weeks. Every simulation was the same. The Achilles alone against thousands of ships. They never fired a weapon. They never tried to destroy anything. Instead, they practiced deception, infiltration, and manipulation. They practiced appearing and vanishing. They practiced rewriting orders and seeding lies. They practiced breaking trust. Rajan watched the crew work. The linguists crafted perfect alien sentences, matching the speech patterns of individual Dominion officers so precisely that even a native speaker could not tell the difference. The psychologists predicted how each species would react to specific provocations. The engineers kept the Phantom Drive running at peak performance, folding the ship in and out of reality like a card trick. They were not soldiers. They were something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never seen. Meanwhile, across the galaxy at the Nexion Rift, the Grand Armada gathered. 12,000 warships from dozens of species assembled in formations that stretched across millions of kilometers. It was the most terrifying display of military power the galaxy had ever known. Supreme Archon Vel-Cathari stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's pride, and watched his fleet with satisfaction. Victory was already certain in his mind. Humanity was small, weak, and alone. Around him, his officers celebrated. Rithkai warriors sharpened their blades and boasted of the glory to come. Selvari intelligence officers quietly gathered data and trusted no one. Orathi captains followed orders with the hollow obedience of a people who had learned long ago that resistance meant death. One Selvari officer did not celebrate. Her name was Thyra Selvas, and she had spent the last month staring at something that did not make sense. Human communications had gone completely silent. No signals, no chatter, no diplomatic pleas, nothing. Every species in the galaxy, when faced with the Grand Armada, did the same thing. They screamed, they begged, they threatened, they bargained. Humans were doing none of these things. The silence was absolute. Thyra brought her concerns to the Archon. "It is unnatural," she said. "Silence like this is not the behavior of prey. It is the behavior of a predator, waiting in the tall grass." The Archon dismissed her with a wave of his armored hand. "They are insects," he said. "Insects do not wait, they hide. And hiding will not save them." Thyra returned to her station and said nothing more. But she did not stop watching, and late at night, when the flagship was quiet, she stared at the empty space on her screens, where human signals should have been, and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt afraid. Somewhere in that empty space, the Achilles moved like a whisper through dark water. It was close now, closer than anyone in the Dominion could have imagined. Elara sat in her captain's chair, watching the distant glow of 12,000 enemy ships on her display. "Begin Phase 1, she said. The war had already started. The Dominion just did not know it yet. The Achilles drifted through the Nexian rift like a ghost walking through a crowded room. It existed between the folds of space, invisible and silent, while 12,000 warships sat all around it, blind to its presence. The most powerful fleet ever assembled had no idea that a single human ship was already swimming among them like a shark beneath still water. Elara gave the order on a Tuesday. She remembered that detail later because it seemed so ordinary, the most important act of sabotage in human history, and it started on a Tuesday. "Sana," she said quietly, "begin the Whisper campaign." Lieutenant Commander Sana Okafor placed her hands on the Echo Array's control interface and closed her eyes. Around her, 40 communication specialists leaned forward at their stations. They had trained for this moment for months. Some of them had trained for years. A routine supply order from a Rithkai battle group commander was intercepted, held for 3 seconds, and then forwarded to its destination, a Selvari logistics station. But the order had been changed. A single sentence had been added at the end, written in the Rithkai commander's exact communication style. "Ensure the delivery is not delayed by Selvari inefficiency, as has become typical." It was a tiny insult, barely noticeable, the kind of thing that might make a Selvari officer narrow their eyes and say nothing, the kind of thing that would sit in the back of their mind and grow. The second whisper followed an hour later. A Selvari intelligence report about fleet readiness was intercepted and altered before it reached the Archon's command staff. The original report praised the Rithkai fleet's combat preparedness. The altered version included a footnote suggesting that Rithkai weapons maintenance standards had declined noticeably in recent months. By the end of the first day, the Echo team had altered 47 separate communications. None of the changes were dramatic. All of them were perfectly crafted to feel real. The linguists matched every word to the style of the original sender. The psychologists designed each alteration to press on exactly the right nerve. Rithkai pride, Selvari superiority, or Rothi resentment. By the end of the first week, the changes numbered in the hundreds. Supply manifests were adjusted so that Rithkai ships received slightly fewer fuel cells than they had requested. Patrol assignments were rewritten so that Orathi vessels were consistently given the longest and most dangerous routes. Intelligence briefings were altered to suggest that certain species were receiving privileged information that others were denied. The effects were slow at first, like cracks forming in ice. A Rithkai captain complained to another Rithkai captain about Selvari arrogance. An Orathi supply officer filed a formal grievance about unfair resource distribution. A group of officers from 3 different species got into a shouting match on a shared space station over who had priority docking rights. Alara watched it all from the Achilles operations room. The intercepted communications flowed across her screens in real time, every argument, every complaint, every whispered suspicion. Dr. Amara Diop sat beside her, reading the data with the focused calm of a surgeon watching a patient's vital signs. "The Rithkai are responding fastest," Amara said. "They are a proud species with a deep cultural emphasis on honor. The altered communications suggest they are being disrespected, and they cannot tolerate that. And the Arathi? Slower to react, but deeper. They carry 400 years of conquered people resentment. Every unfair patrol assignment, every shorted supply delivery, confirms what they have always believed, that the Dominion sees them as expendable." Alara nodded. "How long before something breaks?" "At this rate, 2 weeks. It took 10 days. On the 10th day, 3 Rithkai captains surrounded a Selvari logistics commander on a refueling station and demanded to know why their ships had received inferior fuel cells for the 3rd time in a row. The Selvari commander, who genuinely had no idea what they were talking about because the supply records he had seen showed everything was normal, told them they were mistaken. The Rithkai took this as an insult. One of them challenged the Selvari to an honor duel. The duel left the Selvari in a medical bay with a shattered arm, and the Rithkai captain feeling vindicated, but watched closely by Dominion military police. 2 days later, 2 Arathi cruisers refused a patrol assignment. Their admiral sent a message to the Archon's command staff, stating that the Arathi Confederacy would no longer accept what he called punitive and discriminatory deployment orders. The message was polite, but firm. It was also intercepted by the Achilles and forwarded to every Rithkai commander in the fleet, with a small addition implying that the Arathi were threatening to abandon the Armada entirely. The Rithkai were furious. Not because they liked the Arathi, they did not, but because the idea of any species walking away from a fight offended everything they believed about honor and duty. Angry messages flew back and forth. Accusations were made. Old grievances were dragged into the light. And through it all, the Achilles drifted silently, unseen, feeding the fire. Alara ordered Phase 2 on the 14th day. The Phantom Drive activated, and the Achilles slipped out of its dimensional fold for exactly 4 seconds. It appeared on the edge of a Rithkai fleet formation, close enough to be detected by their sensors, far enough that no weapon could lock on. Then it vanished. The Rithkai sensors screamed, "A ghost contact, unknown origin, possibly human." The Rithkai commanders immediately demanded to know if any other fleet group had detected it. No one had, because the Achilles had only appeared near the Rithkai formation. The next day, the Achilles appeared for 3 seconds near an Arathi patrol group. Then, near a formation of ships from the Threni species, a minor Dominion member with a long history of paranoia. Each time, only the nearest ships detected it. Each time, the Achilles vanished before anyone could respond. And each time, the species that detected it sent urgent messages to the Dominion command, asking why no one else had seen anything, and why no one was sharing information about a possible human infiltrator. The Dominion command had no answers, because the Echo Array was quietly delaying and burying their reports. On the 18th day, the inevitable happened. A Rithkai destroyer, its crew exhausted and paranoid from days of ghost contacts and rising tensions, detected a sensor shadow on the edge of their formation. The captain, a young officer with more pride than experience, ordered his weapons to fire. The shadow was not the Achilles. It was an Arathi cruiser that had strayed slightly from its assigned patrol lane. The Rithkai destroyer's plasma cannons tore into the Arathi cruiser's port side. The Arathi crew, believing they were under attack, returned fire immediately. Within minutes, 5 more ships from both species had joined the exchange. By the time the Archon's command staff managed to restore order, 11 ships were damaged. 37 crew members were dead. Archon Velkathari was enraged. He ordered the Rithkai captain who had fired first, brought to the bridge of the Dominion's Pride, and he executed the officer personally, in front of representatives from every species in the fleet. The message was clear: disobedience would not be tolerated. But the message the Rithkai received was different. They saw one of their own killed for defending his ship. They saw the Archon choosing Arathi lives over Rithkai honor. The rage that had been simmering for weeks now boiled just beneath the surface. In the chaos, Thyra Selvos worked alone in her quarters. She had been pulled from active duty and placed under surveillance after her warnings to the Archon. But she had not stopped working. She was reviewing communication logs, not the altered ones, but the raw signal data, the patterns beneath the patterns. And she found something: ghost signals, tiny fragments of data that did not belong to any Dominion system. They appeared and disappeared in microsecond bursts, always at the exact moments when communications were being routed between fleet groups. Someone was intercepting and rewriting messages in real time, and they were doing it from inside the rift. Her blood went cold. She ran the analysis 3 more times. The result was the same every time. She tried to contact the Archon, but her communication access had been restricted. She tried to reach other Selvari officers, but her messages were flagged and held by security protocols that she suspected were being manipulated by the same invisible hand. Finally, she found one channel that was still open, a personal frequency shared with an old friend, a Selvari officer named Kale, who served on a cruiser at the edge of the fleet. She encoded her message in an old Selvari cipher that no human system should be able to read. Kale, the enemy is already here. It is one ship, and it is winning. She sent the message and sat in the dark of her quarters, listening to the distant sounds of the fleet around her, the rumble of engines, the echo of shouted orders, the growing hum of a machine that was tearing itself apart from the inside. On the Achilles, Ilara sat on the observation deck and stared into the blackness beyond the hull. Rajan found her there, as he often did, in the quiet hours when the crew slept. "It is working," he said. "Yes. You do not sound happy about it." Ilara was quiet for a long moment. 37 people died today because of what we did. They were not our enemies, Rajan. They were soldiers following orders, in a fleet that was lied to by their own command, and then lied to again by us. If we do not do this, 15 billion humans die. I know. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. She pressed them flat against her knees. I know the math. I know the logic. But those 37 people had families. They had names. Rajan sat down beside her. He did not say anything. Sometimes silence was the only honest response. After a while, Ilara stood. Her face was calm again, locked behind the steady mask of command. "Monitor Thyra Selvos," she said. "She is getting close to the truth. If her message reaches the right people, everything changes." She walked back toward the bridge, her boots clicking softly on the metal floor. The war was not over. The hardest part was still ahead. And somewhere in the darkness of the Nexion Rift, the galaxy's mightiest fleet continued to crack, one whisper at a time. The message appeared on Sana Okafor's screen at 3 in the morning, ship time. She almost missed it. It was buried inside a burst of routine Selvari personal communications, encrypted in a cipher so old that most modern systems would not have recognized it as encryption at all. But the echo array was not most modern systems. It flagged the anomaly, decrypted the cipher in 11 seconds, and placed the translated text on Sana's display. Kale, the enemy is already here. It is one ship, and it is winning. Sana read it twice. Then she called the captain. Ilara arrived on the operations deck 4 minutes later, still pulling on her jacket. She read the message in silence. Rajan stood beside her, his face tight with worry. "Thyra Selvos," Ilara said. "She figured it out. If her contact acts on this information and it reaches the Archon, Rajan began, then the Archon will know everything. He will know it is one ship. He will know we are inside his communications, and the entire fracture protocol collapses. The room was very quiet. 300 people had spent weeks carefully pulling the Grand Armada apart, thread by thread. One message from one clever Selvari officer could stitch it all back together. Ilara stared at the screen for a long time. Then she made a decision that changed everything. We accelerate. Phase 3 begins now. Rajan's eyes widened. Now? Captain, Phase 3 was designed for the final days before the invasion. The fleet is not fractured enough yet. If we reveal ourselves too early, if we wait, Thyra's message reaches the Archon, and we lose everything we have built. We go now, Rajan. Tonight. She turned to face the operations deck. Every crew member was awake now, drawn by the sudden energy crackling through the ship's corridors. They looked at her and waited. All stations prepare for full dimensional emergence, Ilara said. We are dropping the cloak. We are going to let 12,000 warships see us. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. They moved to their stations with the quiet efficiency of people who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. The Phantom Drive hummed as it shifted configurations. For weeks, it had kept the Achilles folded between layers of reality, invisible and untouchable. Now it would do the opposite. It would unfold the ship into normal space, right at the center of the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Ilara took her seat. She gripped the armrests and let out one slow breath. Then she gave the order. The Achilles appeared. It materialized at the exact geometric center of the Grand Armada, surrounded on every side by warships that dwarfed it 100 times over. Alarms screamed across 12,000 bridges. Sensors locked onto the small, battered-looking human vessel, with the confused intensity of predators suddenly discovering prey standing calmly in the middle of their den. On the bridge of the Dominion's Pride, Archon Velkathari stared at the sensor display and felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. The human ship, here, alone, surrounded and helpless. He had dreamed of this moment. All ships hold fire, he commanded, his voice booming across the fleet-wide channel. I want this vessel captured intact. I want its crew alive. The galaxy will watch us drag these creatures from their ship in chains. 1,000 weapon systems locked onto the Achilles. The fleet tightened around it like a fist closing. There was nowhere to run. She sat perfectly still in her chair while the Dominion fleet surrounded her, and she waited for exactly the right moment. The moment when every single ship in the Armada was watching and listening. Then she opened a broadband transmission on every frequency, in every language, to every ship simultaneously. Her face appeared on 12,000 screens. A human woman with gray-streaked hair and a scar on her jaw, sitting calmly in a captain's chair aboard a ship that looked like it should have been scrapped years ago. She did not look afraid. She looked like someone about to deliver a verdict. My name is Captain Ilara Voss of the Terran Defense Compact, she said. Her voice was steady, clear, and carried in perfect translation to every species in the fleet. I am speaking to every officer and crew member in the Grand Armada. Not to your Archon, to you. On the Dominion's Pride, the Archon snarled and ordered his communications officers to jam the signal. They tried. The echo array was already blocking every jamming attempt before it began. Only Ilara's voice got through. For the past 30 days, my ship has been inside your fleet. We have been reading your communications. All of them. And we have something to show you. The screens across 12,000 bridges split into two columns. On the left, original communications. The real orders, the real reports, the real messages sent between fleet groups. On the right, the altered versions, the ones that had actually been delivered. The fleet watched in stunned silence as message after message was displayed. Supply orders that had been changed to shortchange certain species. Patrol assignments rewritten to punish the Arathi. Intelligence reports altered to insult the Rithkai. Every whisper, every manipulation, every carefully planted lie, all of it laid bare. Yes, Alara said, we did this. We altered your communications and turned you against each other. I will not apologize for it. But what I am about to show you, this we did not create. This was already there. The screens changed again. Now they showed documents that the Echo Array had pulled directly from the Archon's personal command files. Files that were supposed to be sealed behind the highest security in the Dominion. The first document was the Archon's actual invasion plan for Terran space. The fleet watched as the tactical overlay appeared, showing exactly which ships would form the vanguard, the first wave that would absorb the heaviest human resistance. Every ship in the vanguard belonged to either the Rithkai or the Orathi. The Archon's own Velithari fleet was positioned safely in the rear. The second document was worse. It was a strategic assessment, classified at the highest level, that ranked every species in the Dominion by what it called tactical expendability. The Rithkai were listed as high-value disposable assets. The Arathi were categorized as loss acceptable. 7 other species were marked as replaceable. Only the Velithari were classified as preservation priority. The silence that followed was the loudest silence Ilara had ever heard. Then she spoke the final words. You are not an alliance. You are a hierarchy of sacrifices, and he decides who burns first. The transmission ended. The screens went dark. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. The entire fleet hung motionless in space, 12,000 ships frozen between one heartbeat and the next. Then the Rithkai fleet commander, a massive battle-scarred admiral named Creth Voranis, opened a channel to the Archon's flagship. Explain, he said. Cold as deep space. The Archon's response was immediate and furious. This is human trickery. Fabricated documents designed to— I have seen the tactical overlay, Creth interrupted. I have seen my ships placed in the vanguard. I have seen the word disposable next to the name of my species. Explain, Archon. Explain now. The Archon tried. He argued. He denied. He raged. But the documents were real. The Echo Array had not fabricated them, only stolen them. And every intelligence officer in the fleet could verify their authenticity within minutes. The Arathi Confederacy's admiral was the first to act. He broadcast a simple message to every Arathi ship. All Arathi vessels, disengage from fleet formation. We are withdrawing. Effective immediately. 200 Arathi ships broke formation and began moving toward the edge of the rift. The Archon screamed at them to stop. They did not stop. The Threnni followed, then the Jolkeen. Species after species peeled away from the Grand Armada, like layers being stripped from a rotting fruit. Within 30 minutes, 4,000 ships had either withdrawn or declared neutrality. The Archon made his fatal decision. All loyal vessels, he commanded, his voice shaking with rage. Fire on any ship that breaks formation. Restore order, now. 3,000 Velithari warships, the Archon's core fleet, opened fire on the retreating ships. Plasma beams and kinetic rounds tore across the rift. An Arathi transport was hit and broke apart. A Threnni cruiser exploded in a ball of white fire. And that was the match that lit the inferno. Creth Voranis roared a single command to the entire Rithkai fleet. 3,000 warships crewed by the most aggressive warrior species in the galaxy, a species that had just been told their lives meant nothing to the leader they served. All Rithkai ships, weapons free. Target the Velithari. The Battle of the Nexian Rift began. It was not humanity against the Dominion. It was the Dominion against itself. Thousands of ships fired on each other in a swirling, chaotic storm of energy and metal. Old hatreds exploded into violence. Centuries of suppressed rage found their release in plasma fire and shattered hulls. The Achilles moved through the chaos like a needle through cloth. The phantom drive kept it flickering between dimensions, appearing for a second here, vanishing there. Always just out of reach, always broadcasting, always amplifying the signals that kept the battle burning. Stray weapons fire filled every direction, and the crew worked in focused silence, knowing that one mistake would end them all. On the Dominion's pride, the Archon watched his fleet tear itself apart, and felt something he had never felt before in his 900-year life. He felt powerless. Thyra Selthos reached the bridge during the worst of the fighting. Her surveillance guards had abandoned their posts when the shooting started, and she had walked through corridors filled with smoke and screaming alarms to reach the command center. She found the Archon standing at the viewport, watching ships burn. His 4 eyes reflected the explosions like dying stars. "Stop this," she said. "Order a ceasefire. End the killing." "They betrayed me," he whispered. "I gave them order. I gave them purpose, and they turned on me because of one human woman and her lies." "Those documents were not lies," Thyra said quietly. "I verified them myself. Every word was real. You put them in the vanguard to die, and you thought they would never find out." The Archon turned on her with fury in his eyes. "I built this fleet. I built this Dominion. No one, not the Rithkai, not the Arathi, and certainly not a handful of soft-skinned humans, tells me how to command what is mine." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target the human ship. Fire the Nexion Lance." The Nexion Lance was the most destructive weapon the Dominion had ever built. A focused beam of compressed stellar energy capable of cracking the crust of a planet. It had been used only twice in recorded history, both times to end wars in a single shot. The massive weapon charged with a sound like a dying sun. Every ship in the rift detected it. Every sensor screamed warnings. The Achilles, still flickering through the chaos, was directly in the firing line. On the bridge, Rajan's voice cut through the noise. "Captain, Nexion Lance charging. Impact in 12 seconds." Alara did not hesitate. She had planned for this moment, and now that it was here, she felt nothing but clarity. "Rajan," she said, her voice perfectly calm, "activate the Lazarus Array. Show them what humanity brought to this fight." The Nexion Lance fired. A beam of compressed stellar energy, white-hot, blinding, and carrying enough force to split a world, screamed across the Nexion Rift toward the Achilles. Every ship in the area turned away from their own battles to watch. Even in the middle of a civil war, the firing of a star-killer weapon demanded attention. It was like watching a god throw a spear. The beam crossed the distance in less than a second. It struck the Achilles dead center, and the Achilles did not die. The Lazarus Array activated at the exact moment of impact. It was not a shield in any way the galaxy understood shields. It did not absorb energy or deflect it. Instead, it folded space around the Achilles in a tight, controlled bubble, a pocket of dimensional distortion that wrapped the ship like a cocoon. The Nexion Lance hit the fold and shattered. It broke apart into 12 separate streams of stellar fire, each one bending away from the Achilles at sharp angles, refracted by the folded space like light through a prism. 12 beams of planet-killing energies scattered outward in every direction. 4 of them hit empty space. 3 struck debris fields and vaporized them. 5 of them struck the Archon's own escort ships. The Velithari dreadnought Eternal Judgment, took a refracted beam through its midsection, and broke in half. The cruiser Dominion's Wrath lost its entire forward section in a flash of white light. 3 smaller escort vessels simply ceased to exist, turned to expanding clouds of superheated gas in less than a heartbeat. The Archon's own weapon had been turned against his own fleet, not by any gun or missile, but by the geometry of folded space. The Achilles had used the most powerful weapon in the galaxy as a mirror, and reflected its fury back at the hand that held it. The psychological impact was total and immediate. Every ship in the rift saw it happen. Every sensor log recorded it. The Dominion's ultimate weapon, the thing that had ended wars and shattered civilizations, had been fired at a single, mid-sized human vessel. And that vessel had not only survived, but had used the beam to destroy the ships around it, without firing a single shot of its own. The remaining Velithari ships stopped fighting, not because they were ordered to, not because they chose to. They stopped because something fundamental broke inside their understanding of the universe. For 9,000 years, they had been the most powerful force in the galaxy. For 9,000 years, no one had been able to stand against them. And now, a lone human ship sat at the center of their shattered formation, untouched, unburned, and utterly beyond anything they knew how to fight. The surrenders came in waves. First, the smaller Velithari vessels, their crews broadcasting ceasefire signals on every channel. Then, the larger cruisers. Then, the battleships. One by one, the warships of the galaxy's most feared species powered down their weapons and went dark. The Rithkai stopped firing as well, though for a different reason. Admiral Kreth had watched the Nexion lance shatter against the human ship, and for the first time in his long and violent life, he felt something he could only describe as respect. The humans had walked alone into the heart of 12,000 warships and had not just survived, they had won without ever pulling a trigger. He opened a channel to the Achilles. "Human captain," he said, his deep voice rough with exhaustion. "The Rithkai do not surrender, but we have no quarrel with you. Our enemy was never your species. It was the chain around our necks." Alara responded simply. "Then break the chain, Admiral. You already have." The Arathi were long gone, their ships already halfway to their home systems. The Threni, the Vaskari, the Jolkeen, and a dozen other species had scattered like seeds in a wind. The Grand Armada, 12,000 warships, the largest fleet in the history of the galaxy, existed in name only. More than 2,000 ships had been destroyed in the fighting, almost all of them by each other. 3,000 more had fled. The rest drifted in silence, waiting for someone to tell them what came next. On the shattered bridge of the Dominion's Pride, Archon Velkithari sat in his command chair, surrounded by sparking consoles and the smell of burned metal. His flagship was crippled, its engines were dead, its weapons were offline. Half its crew was injured or worse. He opened a direct channel to the Achilles. His 4 eyes burned with a hatred so deep it had become something like grief. "How?" he asked. His voice was raw. "You are one ship, one crew, 300 of you against the combined might of 42 civilizations. How is this possible?" Alara looked at him through the screen. She did not gloat, she did not smile. Her face carried the weight of everything she had done. The lives lost, the trust broken, the terrible precision of a plan that had worked exactly as designed. "You spent 9,000 years building the most powerful fleet in the galaxy," she said. "We spent 300 years studying why powerful things break." The Archon stared at her. Then the light in his eyes dimmed, and for the first time, he looked old. He cut the transmission without another word. Thyra Selvos found Alara's signal from the Archon's dying bridge. She had survived the battle by staying low and keeping away from the command staff as chaos consumed the flagship. Now she sat at a secondary communications console and opened a channel to the human ship. "Captain Voss," she said, "my name is Thyra Selvos. I am, or I was, an intelligence officer of the Selvari caste. I have no authority to speak for the Dominion, because as of this moment, the Dominion no longer exists as a functional entity. But I am speaking for myself, and for the thousands of crew members on both sides of this battle who are injured and dying. I am asking for a ceasefire." Ilara studied her face on the screen. She saw exhaustion, intelligence, and something rare in a galaxy that had been ruled by force for 9,000 years. Honesty. "Ceasefire accepted," Ilara said. "We will transmit emergency medical protocols compatible with all species in the rift. Any ship that needs assistance can broadcast on the open channel." Thyra closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet. "You could have destroyed us," she said quietly. "You had the power to cripple our fleet and then call in your own ships to finish us off. Why did you not?" "Because that was never the point," Ilara said. "We did not come here to destroy the Dominion. We came here to survive. Those are not the same thing." The two women looked at each other across the vast gulf between their species, and something passed between them that had no name in any language, a recognition that they were both soldiers who had done terrible things for reasons they believed were right, and that the universe would judge them both in time. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks and months. The Dominion shattered into fragments. Some species formed new, smaller alliances based on mutual respect rather than forced loyalty. Others retreated to their home systems and closed their borders. The Rithkai declared independence and established their own territory, swearing that they would never again serve under another species' command. The Arathi Confederacy opened diplomatic channels with Earth within a month, the first voluntary alien-human diplomacy in history. The Archon was taken into custody by his own people. His trial lasted 3 days. The evidence against him, his own documents, his own words, his own plans to sacrifice allied species for his personal glory, was overwhelming. He was sentenced to exile on a dead moon at the edge of Velatari space, where he would spend the rest of his long life, watching the empire he had built disappear. Humanity's place in the galaxy changed overnight. The species that had been dismissed as insects hiding on the galactic fringe was now spoken of in very different terms. No government moved against Terran space. No fleet threatened human colonies. Not because the galaxy loved humanity. It did not. But because every species now carried the same quiet, unsettling question in the back of their minds. If one ship could do this, what else were the humans hiding? The answer, which only a handful of people on Earth knew, was nothing. The Achilles was humanity's only card, and Ilara had played it perfectly. But the galaxy did not know that, and humanity was wise enough to let the mystery do its work. Ilara returned to Earth as a hero. There were parades planned, speeches written, and medals waiting. She attended none of it. She asked for 1 day of leave, and she spent it alone at the Terran Memorial Wall on Luna, a vast surface of polished black stone engraved with the names of every human who had died in the service of the Defense Compact. She found the names of her old crew, the 7 people who had died beside her on a broken bridge 6 years ago. She stood before their names for a long time. She had used up her tears years ago. Instead, she spoke to them quietly, telling them what had happened, telling them it was over, telling them she was sorry she had not been able to save them, but that she hoped she had saved everyone else. Thyra Selvos became one of the most important figures in the post-Dominion galaxy. She worked tirelessly to build a new coalition, not an empire, but a genuine partnership of willing species. It was slow, difficult, and often painful work. She and Ilara maintained a private correspondence, exchanging messages across the gulf of space. They discussed politics, philosophy, and the strange burden of being the two people who had stood at the center of the galaxy's transformation. In time, their correspondence became something like friendship, the first real friendship between a human and an alien, built on complete honesty. On a quiet evening 6 months after the Battle of the Nexian Rift, Rajan found Alara on the observation deck of the Achilles. The ship was docked at Lunar Command, undergoing repairs and upgrades. The crew had been given leave, but Alara returned to the ship every evening. It was, Rajan realized, the only place she felt at home. She stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars. The galaxy stretched before her, vast, old, and full of species who were only now learning to speak to each other as equals. "What are you thinking about?" Rajan asked. Alara was quiet for a while. The stars reflected in her dark eyes. "They will come again someday," she said. "Not the Dominion. Someone new. Someone who looks at the galaxy and sees something to conquer. Someone who thinks they are the biggest thing in the dark. And when they do," she turned to him, and for the first time since he had known her, she smiled. It was a small smile, tired and scarred and real. "We will be ready. We are always ready. That is the human variable, Rajan. We never stop preparing for the thing that has not happened yet." She turned back to the stars. The Achilles hummed softly around her, alive and waiting. Somewhere across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, alien news broadcasts told the story of what had happened at the Nexian Rift. They told it in 100 different languages to 100 different species, and every version ended the same way. A single journalist, broadcasting from a neutral station at the edge of known space, said the words that would be remembered for generations. On this day, the galaxy learned a truth it will never forget. Humanity does not win wars with fire. They win with patience, with knowledge, and with the terrifying certainty that they have already imagined every way you might try to destroy them, and built an answer for each one. The broadcast ended. The galaxy turned, as it always had, in the cold and endless dark. But it turned a little differently now. Because now, the dark was not empty. Humanity was in it, and humanity was watching.